Kyle Harris sat in the back row of the auction house on Station Meridian, wondering why he had even bothered to come. The place was nearly empty, just 5 other people scattered across a room designed for hundreds. The auctioneer, a tired-looking man with gray hair, droned on about salvage lots that nobody wanted. Kyle was a cargo hauler. He owned a small transport ship that barely made enough money to pay for fuel and food. He had been stuck on this station for 3 days waiting for his next job. The auction was just something to do, a way to kill time before his client finally showed up with the cargo manifest. Most of the lots were junk: broken mining equipment, damaged hull plating, containers of spare parts from ships so old that nobody flew them anymore. The few salvagers in the room bid on some items, but their bids were low. Everyone knew this was bottom barrel stuff. Then, Lot 47 came up on the display screen. Kyle sat up straighter. The image showed a massive warship hanging in space. It was dark, almost black, with strange flowing designs carved into its hull. The auctioneer explained that this was a Vexillari heavy cruiser called the Eternal Horizon. It had been found drifting in unclaimed space 2 years ago. No crew aboard, no distress signals, just floating there like a ghost. The Vexillari were known throughout the galaxy as master shipbuilders. Their vessels were works of art, combining beauty with deadly efficiency. They never abandoned their ships. It was against everything in their culture. Finding an empty Vexillari cruiser was like finding a diamond in a trash heap. The starting bid was 5,000 credits. Kyle almost laughed. His ship was worth 50,000, and it was a tiny cargo hauler. A Vexillari warship should cost millions. There had to be something wrong with it. Maybe the hull was compromised. Maybe the engines were dead. Maybe it was contaminated with radiation or disease. But 5,000 credits, that was nothing. The auctioneer asked for bids. The room stayed silent. The salvagers weren't interested. Warships were complicated, expensive to maintain, hard to sell. Most people wanted simple salvage they could flip quickly for profit. Kyle raised his hand. He didn't even think about it. His arm just went up. The auctioneer looked surprised but nodded. He asked if anyone wanted to counter the bid. Silence filled the room. 30 seconds passed. The auctioneer shrugged and brought down his gavel. Sold to bidder 17 for 5,000 credits. Kyle stared at his hand like it had betrayed him. What had he just done? He owned a warship now. A massive alien warship that he couldn't possibly operate, maintain, or sell. His entire life savings was 12,000 credits. He had just spent almost half of it on what was probably a floating piece of junk. The other bidders filed out. Nobody looked at Kyle or congratulated him. The auctioneer called him up to complete the paperwork. The man seemed almost relieved that someone had taken the ship off the station's hands. Kyle learned more as he signed the digital forms. The Eternal Horizon had been in legal limbo since its discovery. Nobody could find the original owners. The Vexillari government denied any knowledge of it. Salvage rights had finally been granted after 2 years of bureaucratic delays. The station just wanted it gone. It was taking up a valuable docking berth. The auctioneer handed Kyle an access card and docking coordinates. He wished Kyle good luck with a tone that suggested Kyle would need it. Kyle took a shuttle from the station to the docking berth an hour later. The berth was in the oldest section of Station Meridian, a place where derelict ships waited for scrapping or sale. Most of the ships around the Eternal Horizon were small, broken freighters, damaged mining vessels, ships that had seen better days. The Eternal Horizon made them all look like toys. It was enormous. The main hull stretched for almost a kilometer, sleek and predatory despite its size. The black surface seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Those strange flowing patterns covered every surface, alien writing that Kyle couldn't read. They seemed to shimmer slightly, though that might have been a trick of the station lights. Kyle's shuttle docked with the cruiser's main airlock. He stepped through, half expecting alarms or automated defenses to activate. Nothing happened. The airlock cycled normally. The inner door opened with a soft hiss. He walked into a corridor that took his breath away. Everything was pristine. The walls were smooth and dark, lit by soft strips of blue light along the floor and ceiling. The air smelled clean, recycled but fresh. His boots made soft sounds on the deck plating. This wasn't a derelict. This was a functioning ship. Kyle walked slowly through the corridors, his heart pounding. Every system seemed to be working. Life support hummed quietly. Gravity felt normal, which meant the gravity plates were powered and operating. Lights activated as he approached and dimmed after he passed. The ship was maintaining itself. He found what had to be crew quarters. The rooms were designed for beings taller than humans, with high ceilings and furniture that looked elegant but uncomfortable for someone Kyle's size. Everything was clean. Beds were made. No personal items left behind. It was like the crew had simply vanished into thin air. The galley was stocked with supplies, though the food was long expired and had been removed by the salvage team that first boarded. The medical bay was intact, full of equipment that Kyle couldn't identify. Engineering spaces held massive machines that thrummed with power. The fusion reactor was running at minimal output, enough to keep essential systems online. Kyle spent hours exploring before he finally made his way to the bridge. The bridge was incredible. It occupied a large dome at the front of the ship, with transparent sections that looked out into space. Control stations were arranged in a circle around a central command chair. Holographic displays flickered to life as Kyle entered, showing ship status and system readouts in Vexillary script. He approached the command chair carefully. It was too large for him, designed for the tall Vexillary frame, but he climbed into it anyway. The material was soft. Conforming Sly Kyle spent his first night aboard the Eternal Horizon in the captain's quarters. The room was huge, bigger than his entire apartment back on Earth. The bed was too large, and the ceiling too high, but he managed to sleep despite the strangeness of it all. The ship made quiet sounds throughout the night. Not alarming sounds, just the normal hums and clicks of a living vessel maintaining itself. When he woke, Kyle decided to search more systematically. He needed to understand what he owned before he could decide what to do with it. Selling it for scrap seemed wasteful now that he had seen how well everything worked. Maybe he could sell it to a collector or a private military company. Either way, he needed to know more. He started with the crew areas, going through every quarter section he could find. The ship had accommodations for roughly 200 crew members based on the number of personal rooms he counted. Every room was empty of personal belongings. No pictures on walls, no clothing in storage. No tablets or reading materials. The salvage team might have removed some things, but this felt more thorough than that. This felt like a planned evacuation. The armory was locked with security systems that Kyle couldn't bypass. He made a note to come back to it later. The storage bays held basic supplies and spare parts, all neatly organized and cataloged. Everything was in its place. Nothing seemed damaged or missing. By the second day, Kyle had covered most of the ship except for one area. The captain's personal office attached to the captain's quarters had a vault built into the wall. Kyle had noticed it the first night but ignored it. Now he stood in front of it, studying the locking mechanism. It was sophisticated, a combination of biometric scanners and code inputs. The salvage team hadn't opened it, probably because they didn't want to damage valuable equipment trying to break in. Kyle didn't have those concerns. This was his ship now. He spent 6 hours working on the vault. First, he tried to interface his datapad with the control system. That failed. Then he tried to bypass the power supply. That triggered a lockout that took an hour to reset. Finally, he used a cutting torch he found in engineering to carefully remove the locking mechanism entirely. The vault door swung open. Inside was a small space, maybe a meter deep and wide. 3 items sat on a shelf. Kyle reached in carefully and removed them one by one. The first was a data crystal, the kind used for long-term storage. It pulsed with a faint internal light, indicating it was still powered and active. The second was a metal cube, about the size of Kyle's fist. It was covered in symbols that he recognized as warnings in multiple languages, including human languages. The third item made his blood run cold. It was a handwritten note on actual paper. Paper was rare in space. Too fragile, too impractical. People only used it for important things. The note was in English, written in neat handwriting that slanted slightly to the right. Kyle read it once, then read it again to make sure he wasn't imagining things. If you're human and reading this, I'm sorry. We tried to stop them. The cube contains a beacon. Destroy it before they find you. Trust no one from the Coalition. They know what we discovered. Captain Linda Shaw, UESC Pathfinder. Linda Shaw. Kyle knew that name. Every human who traveled in space knew that name. She was a legend, one of Earth's first deep space explorers. She had been part of the initial wave of human expansion into the galaxy 30 years ago. Her ship, the Pathfinder, had disappeared on a routine survey mission. The entire crew, gone without a trace. It had been one of the great mysteries of early space exploration. And here was her handwritten note inside a Vexillari warship warning about the Coalition. The Coalition was Earth's unified space government. They controlled all official human expansion, all military operations, all diplomatic relations with alien species. They were supposed to be transparent, democratic, accountable to the people. Kyle had never particularly trusted them, mostly because he didn't trust any government, but he had never suspected them of anything sinister. He looked at the cube in his hand. It was warm. Not hot, but noticeably warm against his skin. As he held it, it seemed to get slightly warmer. The beacon was active or activating. Kyle set it down quickly on the desk and picked up the data crystal. He needed to know what was on it before he made any decisions about the beacon. There was a data port on the captain's desk terminal. He inserted the crystal and waited while the system processed it. The holographic display above the desk flickered and then displayed an image that made Kyle's stomach drop. It was a star map, but not a normal star map. This one showed human colonies scattered across a huge section of the galaxy. Hundreds of them. Small settlements marked with Earth's old United Nations symbol, each one labeled with coordinates and timestamps. Kyle knew the official human colonial maps by heart. Every cargo hauler did. There were 43 official human colonies, all established within the last 30 years since humanity developed faster-than-light travel. This map showed over 300 colonies, and the timestamps on them were impossible. They ranged from 50 years ago to over 90 years ago, decades before humanity supposedly invented faster-than-light travel. Kyle scrolled through the data, his hands shaking slightly. Each colony had detailed information: population estimates, resource surveys, cultural development notes. These weren't theoretical colonies or planned expansions. These were real, established settlements that had existed for generations. He found a document file labeled "Read this first" and opened it. Linda Shaw's face appeared in a video recording. She looked tired, older than the official photos Kyle had seen. She was sitting in what looked like this very office, on this very ship. "If you're watching this, then you found the eternal horizon," she said. Her voice was steady but sad. "I'm probably dead. I've been hiding for almost 5 years now, and I don't expect to live much longer. I'm old and tired and running out of places to hide." She paused and looked directly at the camera. "Everything you think you know about human history in space is a lie. We didn't develop faster-than-light travel 30 years ago. We developed it 90 years ago, and when we did, we discovered something that changed everything." Linda stood up and moved to a star map display behind her. "Humanity didn't originate on Earth alone. We were seeded across the galaxy millions of years ago by an unknown precursor species. When we finally reached the stars, we found dozens of other human worlds, some primitive, some advanced, all completely isolated from each other and from Earth." Kyle stared at the recording, unable to process what he was hearing. "The Coalition discovered this truth early," Linda continued, "and they decided to hide it. They couldn't control dozens of independent human worlds. They wanted a centralized government, a single unified humanity. So they suppressed the original faster-than-light technology. They spent decades developing a slower, more controllable version. They released it to the public as a new invention and began their official colonial expansion." She sat back down, looking exhausted. "They erased records. They discredited researchers. They made sure that humanity only knew about the colonies the Coalition approved of. Anyone who found evidence of the old colonies was silenced. My crew and I found one of those colonies during a survey mission. When we tried to report it, they declared us lost and sent hunters after us. The recording showed Linda picking up the same cube that now sat on the desk in front of Kyle. The Vexillari helped me. They gave me this ship and sanctuary. They have their own problems with the Coalition, their own reasons to want the truth exposed. I spent years gathering evidence, documenting everything. It's all in this data crystal. She set down the cube and looked at the camera again. The bee Kyle sat at the captain's desk for another hour, trying to decide what to do. The cube sat in front of him, now hot enough that he couldn't comfortably hold it. Whatever beacon was inside it was fully active now. He wondered if it was already transmitting a signal. If it was, who was receiving it? He looked through more of the data crystal's contents. Linda Shaw had been thorough. There were thousands of documents, survey reports from colonies that officially didn't exist, genetic studies proving that humans on different worlds shared common ancestry going back millions of years, archaeological evidence of the precursor species that had seeded humanity across the galaxy, communication logs showing Coalition officials discussing how to suppress the information. The evidence was overwhelming. Linda hadn't been crazy or paranoid. She had been right. Kyle was about to dive deeper into the files when alarms suddenly shrieked throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors outside the office. The ship's computer spoke in Vexillari, but Kyle's datapad translated enough for him to understand the warning. Incoming vessels. Weapons armed. Multiple targets. He ran to the bridge, his heart pounding. The displays came alive as he entered, showing tactical information. 3 ships had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel nearby. They were moving toward the eternal horizon in attack formation. Kyle pulled up the visual feed. The ships were sleek frigates, painted in the white and blue colors of the Coalition military. They were broadcasting on all frequencies, demanding that Kyle power down his ship and prepare for boarding. The message was clear and not particularly polite. They wanted the ship, and they wanted it now. The beacon. They had tracked the beacon's signal. Kyle's mind raced. He had maybe 5 minutes before those frigates were in weapons range. He could try to surrender, but Linda's warning echoed in his head. Trust no one from the Coalition. If they were willing to hunt down and kill Linda Shaw and her crew, they wouldn't hesitate to do the same to him. He had to run. But he had never flown anything bigger than his cargo hauler. The Eternal Horizon was a warship with controls designed for a different species. Could he even operate it? The Coalition ships fired warning shots. Plasma bolts streaked past the Eternal Horizon, close enough that proximity alarms added their screaming to the chaos. Kyle jumped into the command chair. The control interfaces surrounded him, most of the text in Vexillari script that his datapad struggled to translate. But the basics were similar to human ships. Every species used similar principles for spaceflight. Navigation, propulsion, weapons, shields. He just had to figure out which controls did what. His fingers moved across the holographic interface, trying different commands. The ship responded sluggishly at first, systems waking up from standby mode. Then something clicked, and suddenly Kyle felt the ship come alive around him. The displays brightened. Engine status showed power building. Shield generators activated automatically, recognizing the threat. The Coalition ships opened fire for real this time. Plasma bolts hammered into the Eternal Horizon's shields. The ship shuddered, but the shields held. Vexillari engineering was as good as its reputation. Kyle found what he hoped were the engine controls. He pushed power to the main thrusters. The Eternal Horizon lurched forward, pulling away from the station. The Coalition ships adjusted their pursuit vectors, continuing to fire. He needed to jump to faster-than-light travel, but he had no idea how to do it safely. Jumping blind was dangerous. Ships could emerge inside stars or too close to gravity wells. Navigation computers needed time to calculate safe routes. Time Kyle didn't have. Another volley of plasma bolts hit the shields. Warning indicators showed shield strength dropping. The Eternal Horizon could take a beating, but 3 frigates concentrating fire would eventually break through. Kyle made a decision. He pulled up what looked like the navigation interface and entered a random set of coordinates far from any known systems. The computer protested in Vexillari. His datapad translated fragments. Dangerous. Not recommended. Uncertain emergence point. He overrode the warnings and activated the faster-than-light drive. Reality twisted around the ship. The stars outside stretched into lines of light. Kyle's stomach lurched as the artificial gravity struggled to compensate for the transition. Then everything snapped back into focus, and the eternal horizon dropped back into normal space somewhere else. Kyle looked at the tactical display. No pursuing ships. They had escaped. He took a deep breath and tried to calm his racing heart. The navigation display showed their position. They were in an uncharted system with 3 stars orbiting each other in a complex dance. No planets registered on sensors, just asteroid fields and dust clouds. It was empty and isolated, exactly what Kyle needed. Or so he thought. The tactical sensors lit up again. Ships were appearing around the eternal horizon. Not coalition frigates this time. These were different designs. Smaller, more angular, painted in dark colors with red markings. Kyle counted 6 of them, forming a loose sphere around his position. One of the ships broadcast a message on a frequency Kyle's systems automatically translated. Eternal Horizon, this is Commander Greg Palmer of the Free Colonies Alliance. Power down your weapons and prepare to receive visitors. We mean you no harm. Free Colonies. Alliance. Kyle had never heard of them. But they knew the name of his ship. They had been waiting for him. Somehow they knew he would come here. Kyle considered his options. He could try to run again, but his understanding of the Eternal Horizon systems was too limited. These ships had been waiting in an uncharted system. They knew things he didn't. Running might just get him killed. He activated the communication system, hoping he was using it correctly. This is Kyle Harris. I don't know who you are or what you want, but I'm not looking for trouble. I just bought this ship at an auction. There was a pause. Then Commander Palmer's voice came through again, and Kyle could hear amusement in it. We know, Kyle Harris. We've been monitoring Station Meridian's auctions for 2 years, waiting for someone to finally claim the Eternal Horizon. Linda Shaw told us someone would eventually find it. We just didn't expect it to be quite so random. You knew Linda Shaw? We did. She spent her last years with us. She died peacefully, if you're wondering. Old age, nothing dramatic. She made us promise to watch over this ship and help whoever found it. We've been keeping our promise. Kyle felt some of his tension ease slightly. These people had known Linda. They were expecting him or someone like him. The Coalition just attacked me. They tracked the beacon. We know. We saw them arrive at Station Meridian just after you jumped away. They're probably tearing apart that station looking for information about you right now. Palmer paused. You activated the beacon when you opened the vault. It's been transmitting for the last 2 hours. That's how the Coalition found you so quickly. It's also how we found you. Kyle looked at the cube, still sitting on the captain's desk where he had left it. Linda's message said I should destroy it. She also said you should make your own choice. The beacon is transmitting to our network right now, but it's not broadcasting publicly yet. You can still turn it off, or you can activate the full network and release all of Linda's evidence to the galaxy. Either way, the choice is yours. But first, we think you should see what you'd be fighting for. What do you mean? Come with us, Kyle Harris. Let us show you the colonies that officially don't exist. Meet the people who've been living free while Earth thinks it controls all of humanity. Then decide whether the truth is worth the chaos it will cause. Kyle looked at the tactical display, at the 6 ships surrounding him. They hadn't fired. They weren't threatening him. They were just waiting. He thought about Linda Shaw, hiding on this ship for years, gathering evidence but unable to make the final choice. He thought about the Coalition frigates that had opened fire without warning or negotiation. He thought about the hundreds of colonies marked on that star map, all those humans living in ignorance of each other. Where are we going? Kyle asked. Palmer's voice carried a note of relief. To Haven Station. It's our main set. Haven Station appeared gradually as they approached through the asteroid field. At first, Kyle thought it was just another large asteroid. Then he noticed the lights, the docking ports, the clear signs of habitation carved into the rock. The station had been built inside a massive asteroid, hidden from casual scans but clearly sophisticated once you got close. The escort ships guided the Eternal Horizon to a docking berth designed for large vessels. Kyle managed to land without too much trouble, though the ship's controls still felt foreign to him. As he powered down the systems, he wondered again if he was making a mistake. These people could be anyone. They could have their own agenda. But they had known Linda Shaw. That had to count for something. A delegation met him at the airlock. Commander Greg Palmer was a tall man with gray hair and weathered features that suggested he had spent years in space. He wore a simple uniform, dark blue with that phoenix symbol Kyle had seen on the ships. Behind him stood 4 others, all human, all watching Kyle with curious expressions. Palmer extended his hand. "Welcome to Haven, Kyle Harris. Thank you for trusting us." Kyle shook his hand. "I'm not sure I had much choice. The Coalition wants me dead, apparently. They want the Eternal Horizon and everything it contains. You're just an inconvenience to them." Palmer gestured for Kyle to follow. "Come. We have a lot to show you, and not much time. The Coalition knows you jumped, and they'll be searching every system within range." They walked through corridors carved from living rock, but lined with metal and composite materials. The station was larger than Kyle had expected. They passed residential areas, market spaces, even what looked like schools with children playing in common areas. Everyone they passed stared at Kyle with interest, but no one seemed hostile. Palmer led them to a secured briefing room deep in the station's core. The room had a large table surrounded by chairs and walls covered in display screens. Palmer activated the screens, showing maps and data that Kyle recognized from Linda Shaw's data crystal. "Let me give you the history lesson that Earth doesn't teach," Palmer began. He pulled up an image of Earth from orbit. 93 years ago, a research team working on quantum field theory accidentally discovered a method for faster-than-light travel. They weren't trying to invent it. They were studying something completely different. But they found it. The display changed to show a small research ship. They built a prototype in secret, tested it. It worked. They could travel between stars in hours instead of decades. It should have been humanity's greatest achievement. Another image appeared, this one showing a planet Kyle didn't recognize. Their third test flight took them to a system 40 light-years from Earth. They found a planet there, an inhabited planet, with humans on it. Kyle leaned forward. How? That was their question too. These humans had no space travel. They had technology roughly equivalent to Earth's industrial age. They had no memory of coming from Earth or anywhere else. As far as they knew, they had always been on that world. Palmer pulled up genetic data. But DNA analysis proved they were human. Identical genetic markers to Earth humans. Not just similar. Identical. He switched to another star map. The research team explored further. They found 7 more human worlds within 100 light-years of Earth, all at different technology levels. Some primitive, some advanced. All completely isolated from each other. All genetically identical to Earth humans. Kyle stared at the map. The precursor species, the ones who seeded humanity across the galaxy. Exactly, though we still don't know who they were or why they did it. We found ruins on some worlds, artifacts that date back millions of years. But nothing that explains their motivation. Palmer sat down heavily. The research team brought this information back to Earth's government. They expected celebration, excitement, plans to contact these lost human colonies. The display showed official documents, old government seals. Instead, they got suppression. The government realized that if humanity learned there were dozens of independent human worlds, all with their own cultures and governments, it would be impossible to maintain centralized control. They wanted one humanity, one government, one unified expansion into the galaxy. Palmer's expression hardened. So they classified everything. They confiscated the research. They threatened the team into silence. Then they spent the next 60 years slowly developing their own version of faster-than-light travel. A slower version, one they could control. They released it 30 years ago and presented it as brand new technology. What happened to the research team? Most of them stayed quiet. They had families, careers, reputations to protect. A few tried to speak out. They had accidents, disappeared, got discredited as crazy. Palmer pulled up an image of a younger Linda Shaw. Linda was part of the first official exploration wave. She didn't know about the original discovery, but she found one of the hidden colonies during a survey mission. When she tried to report it, the coalition declared her ship lost and sent hunters after her. Kyle remembered the recording. She spent years gathering evidence. She did. She found allies among the Vexillari. They had their own reasons to want the coalition exposed. They gave her the eternal horizon and helped her document everything. She eventually found her way to us. Who are you exactly? Palmer smiled. We're the Free Colonies Alliance, an organization of people who learned the truth and decided we didn't want to live under coalition control. Some of us are from Earth, refugees who escaped when they learned too much. Some are from the hidden colonies, people who found out about Earth and wanted contact. We've been building a network for 20 years, waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. He gestured at the displays. Haven Station alone houses 50,000 people. We have similar settlements in 11 other systems. All hidden, all self-sufficient, all waiting. We're not trying to start a war. We're just trying to survive until the truth can be told safely. Kyle looked at the phoenix symbol on Palmer's uniform. Why a phoenix? Because we represent humanity rising from the ashes of lies. Because we believe the truth will burn away the coalition's deceptions and let real human unity emerge. Palmer leaned forward. Linda wanted to activate her beacon network and broadcast everything. But she was afraid of starting a civil war. Afraid that Earth's population would react violently to learning their government had been lying for almost a century. So she left the choice to whoever found her ship. To someone with fresh eyes and no agenda. Someone who could see the situation clearly. Palmer pulled up an image of the beacon cube. The beacon is active now. It's transmitting to relay stations we've built in secret across dozens of systems. Right now, those relays are just receiving and storing data. But if you give the command, they'll broadcast everything simultaneously. To Earth, to every human colony, to every news network and independent station in known space. Kyle felt the weight of it settling on him again. The coalition couldn't stop it. They could try to jam some transmissions, shut down some networks. But we've built in redundancy. The information would get out. Within hours, billions of people would know the truth. Palmer's voice softened. But it would also destabilize everything. Trust in government would collapse. Some people would demand reunification with the hidden colonies. Others would want to maintain the status quo. There could be protests, riots, maybe worse. Or one of the other people in the room spoke up, a woman with dark hair and tired eyes. People could surprise us. Maybe they'd handle the truth better than we think. Maybe they'd demand peaceful change rather than violence. Palmer nodded. That's the hope. That humanity is ready for the truth. But it's not a guarantee. Kyle stood and walked to the displays, looking at the evidence Linda had compiled. Years of work, proof of governmental deception on a massive scale, the secret history of human expansion into the galaxy, all waiting for him to make a choice. What do you want me to do? He asked. Palmer stood as well. I want you to spend some time here, meet people from the hidden colonies, hear their stories, understand what you'd be fighting for if you activate the beacon, then make your choice. Linda trusted that whoever found her ship would do. Kyle spent 3 days exploring Haven Station and meeting its people. Palmer assigned him a guide, a young woman named Claire who had been born on one of the hidden colonies and only learned about Earth 5 years ago. She showed him around with enthusiasm, proud of what the Free Colonies Alliance had built. The residential areas were cramped but comfortable. Families lived in small apartments carved from the asteroid rock, but they had made them into homes with decorations and personal touches. Children played in common areas, their laughter echoing through the corridors. It reminded Kyle of the working-class neighborhoods on Earth where he had grown up. Claire took him to meet a family from a colony called New Terra. The father, a man named Paul, worked in the station's hydroponics bay. His wife Kate taught at the station's school. They had 2 children, both under 10 years old. Paul made tea, an Earth tradition that New Terra had somehow preserved across centuries of isolation. Our world was discovered about 8 years ago, he explained. A coalition survey ship found us during a mapping mission. They told us we were alone, that Earth was far away and didn't know we existed. Kate picked up the story. They offered us membership in the coalition, said we could have trade, technology, contact with other humans. We were excited. We'd always wondered if we were alone in the universe. What changed? Kyle asked. Paul's expression darkened. We had archaeologists on New Terra who studied the ancient ruins on our world. When they shared their findings with the coalition scientists, everything changed. The coalition tried to confiscate the research. When our government refused, they threatened us, said we were spreading dangerous misinformation. Our government pushed back, Kate said. We wanted to know why the coalition was so afraid of our history. That's when some of our people started investigating. They found evidence of other hidden colonies. They found hints of a cover-up. Some of them reached out through back channels and eventually made contact with the Alliance. Paul took a sip of his tea. We had a choice: join the coalition and accept their version of history, or refuse and risk isolation or worse. About 5,000 of us chose to leave New Terra and join the Alliance instead. We've been here for 3 years now. Kyle looked at their children, playing with toys in the corner of the small apartment. Do you regret it? Kate smiled sadly. Sometimes. We left behind family, friends, our whole lives. But we couldn't live with the lies, and we wanted our children to grow up knowing the truth about who they are, where they came from. Over the next 2 days, Kyle heard similar stories from dozens of people. A scientist from Earth who discovered the original research papers and had to flee before the coalition silenced him. A pilot who found evidence of hidden colonies during a mission and was ordered to forget what she saw. Families from 4 different hidden colonies, all forced to choose between comfortable lies and uncomfortable truths. They were ordinary people, not revolutionaries or ideologues. Just humans who wanted to live honestly and know their real history. On the 4th day, Palmer took Kyle back to the eternal horizon. They sat on the bridge, looking out at Haven Station through the transparent dome. Have you made a decision? Palmer asked. Kyle had been thinking about nothing else for days. I keep coming back to one question. If I activate the beacon, what happens to these people? To the families I've met? If the coalition goes to war to suppress the truth, places like Haven Station will be the first targets. Palmer nodded slowly. That's possible. We've prepared for it as best we can. We have defenses, escape plans, hidden supply caches. But yes, we'd be at risk. So I could be signing your death warrants. Or you could be giving us a chance at a real future. Palmer turned to look at Kyle. Right now, we're hiding, living in asteroid bases and abandoned stations, moving from place to place whenever the coalition gets too close. Our children are growing up in tunnels and corridors, never seeing sunlight or breathing real air. Is that better than taking a risk for something more? Kyle thought about the children he had met, about Paul and Kate's kids playing in their cramped apartment, about Claire's stories of growing up on a hidden colony, always wondering about the stars. Linda couldn't make this choice, Kyle said. Why do you think I can? Palmer smiled. Linda was brave, brilliant, and determined. But she was also tired and scared. She had spent years running, hiding, watching friends die. She was too close to it all. You're not. You can see the situation clearly because you just stumbled into it. You don't have years of fear and loss clouding your judgment. That doesn't make the choice any easier. No, but it makes you the right person to make it. Kyle stood and walked to the beacon cube, which he had brought to the bridge. It sat on a control console, still warm, still transmitting to Palmer's network. If I activate it, there's no taking it back. No, the information will spread too fast. Within hours, it will be everywhere. And if I destroy it? Palmer was quiet for a moment. Then we keep hiding. We keep hoping that someday, somehow, the truth will come out through other means. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. Either way, we'll respect your choice. Kyle picked up the cube. It was heavier than it looked, or maybe that was just the weight of what it represented. He thought about everything he had learned. The lies that had shaped human history for nearly a century. the colonies that existed in secret, the families torn apart by the need to hide the truth. He thought about Linda Shaw, gathering evidence she was too afraid to release, about Palmer and his people, living in hiding but refusing to give up, about ordinary people making extraordinary sacrifices for something they believed in. Kyle made his decision, but not the one anyone expected. He sat down at the Eternal Horizons communication station and started programming. Palmer watched with confusion as Kyle's fingers flew across the controls. "What are you doing?" "Something that Linda didn't consider. Something you haven't tried." Kyle pulled up the beacon network controls. "I'm not going to broadcast everything all at once. That would be chaos. You're right that people might react violently." He modified the beacon's programming, creating a schedule of releases. "Instead, I'm going to release the information gradually over 6 months, a little bit at a time. First, evidence of the ancient precursor species. Let people digest that. Then genetic data proving human origins are more complex than we thought. Then archaeological findings from the hidden colonies." Palmer leaned forward, understanding dawning on his face. "By the time we get to the really explosive stuff, the government cover-up and the hidden colonies, people will have had time to adjust. They'll have asked questions, done their own research. The information will spread organically, not as a sudden shock." Kyle programmed the first data packet. "And I'm not just sending it to news networks. I'm sending pieces to journalists, scientists, independent researchers, even coalition officials who might be honest." He activated the program. "The information will be out there, but slowly. The coalition can try to suppress it, but they'll be fighting a slow leak instead of a flood. And by spreading it through multiple channels, we make it harder for them to control the narrative." Palmer watched the display as the first data packets began transmitting. "You're not starting a revolution. You're starting a conversation. A conversation that will lead to change, but hopefully peaceful change. People will have time to process the truth, to demand answers, to push for reform without violence." Kyle stood up. Linda was right that the truth needs to come out. But she was also right to be afraid of chaos. This way, maybe we get the truth without the Civil War. Palmer was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Linda would have liked you, Kyle Harris. You found a middle path she couldn't see. Let's hope it works." Over the next few hours, the first pieces of information began spreading through human space. Evidence of the precursor species. Data that raised questions about human origins. Nothing explosive yet, but enough to make people curious, enough to start conversations. Kyle monitored the early reactions. Confusion mostly. Some excitement from scientists. A few conspiracy theorists claiming they had always known. The coalition issued a standard response, saying they would investigate these claims. But the information was out there now. Growing, spreading, building toward the revelations that would come in the following months. Palmer stood beside Kyle on the bridge. "You realize the coalition will still hunt for you. They'll know you're behind this." "Probably, but I have a Vexillari warship now, and I'm getting better at flying it." Kyle looked out at Haven Station. "Besides, I figure I owe it to Linda to see this through, to make sure all her evidence gets out there." "What will you do after, when all the information is released?" Kyle thought about his old life, hauling cargo and barely making ends meet. That seemed like a distant memory now. "I don't know. Maybe use this ship to help connect the hidden colonies with Earth. Seems like people are going to need bridges between worlds once the truth is out." Palmer extended his hand. "The Alliance would be honored to have you as an ally." 6 months passed like a storm. Kyle spent most of that time in motion, moving between hidden Alliance stations and making supply runs to isolated colonies. The Eternal Horizon became famous, or infamous depending on who you asked. The Coalition declared it a stolen vessel. The Alliance called it a symbol of hope. Kyle just called it home. The information releases went exactly as planned. Each month brought new revelations. Scientists on Earth and the official colonies began asking uncomfortable questions. Why had the government never mentioned evidence of precursor species? Why did genetic data from supposedly new colonies show signs of ancient ancestry? Why were archaeological findings being suppressed? By the third month, independent journalists had started connecting the dots. Some faced pressure from coalition officials to stop their investigations. That pressure just made them dig harder. The attempted suppression became part of the story, proof that something was being hidden. Kyle watched it all unfold from the bridge of the eternal horizon. He monitored news feeds from Earth, from the official colonies, from the hidden settlements that were slowly revealing themselves. Palmer had been right. The slow release was working. People were angry, but they were asking questions rather than rioting. The fourth month brought the biggest revelation. Evidence of the original faster-than-light discovery 90 years ago. Documentation showing how the coalition's predecessors had suppressed it. Names of officials involved. Proof of a conspiracy that spanned decades. Earth erupted in protests, but they were organized and mostly peaceful. People demanded transparency. They demanded access to the hidden colonies. They demanded prosecutions of officials who had participated in the cover-up. The coalition's leadership tried to deny everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. Some officials resigned. Others faced criminal investigations. A few tried to flee and were arrested. The whole structure of human space governance began to shift, not through violence but through the steady pressure of truth. Kyle was ferrying medical supplies to a newly revealed colony called Hope's End when Palmer contacted him with urgent news. "You need to see this. Turn on the Earth News Network." Kyle pulled up the feed. The president of the coalition was giving an address. The woman looked tired, defeated. She stood behind a podium bearing the coalition's seal and spoke in a voice that trembled slightly. "Citizens of Earth and all human colonies, I come before you today to acknowledge what many of you have already concluded. The information that has been released over the past months is true. Our government and its predecessors engaged in a systematic suppression of humanity's true history. We hid the existence of colonies. We manipulated the timeline of our technological development. We lied to you for almost a century." Kyle watched in amazement as the president continued. "I take full responsibility for my administration's role in perpetuating these lies. Effective immediately, I am resigning my position. I am calling for the dissolution of the current coalition government and the formation of a constitutional convention to create a new system of governance. One that includes representatives from all human colonies, both those officially recognized and those that have lived in hiding." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "To the people of the hidden colonies, we offer our sincere apologies. You deserved honesty and inclusion. Instead, you received persecution and denial. We ask for your forgiveness and your participation in building a better future for all of humanity." The feed ended. Kyle sat in stunned silence. Palmer's voice came through the comm. "She did it. She actually did it." "Will it work?" Kyle asked. "Can they really rebuild trust after this?" "I don't know, but it's a start. More than Linda ever dreamed was possible." Over the following weeks, the political situation continued to evolve. A transitional government took power on Earth, promising transparency and reform. The Constitutional Convention began, with representatives from 47 different human colonies, including a dozen that had been hidden. The Free Colonies Alliance sent Palmer as their primary representative. Kyle found himself in an unexpected position. He was famous now, the person who had triggered the slow revelation that changed everything. News networks wanted interviews. Historians wanted his story. Politicians wanted his endorsement. He turned down most of the requests. He wasn't a politician or a celebrity. He was just someone who had made a choice and tried to do the right thing. But he did accept one invitation. New Terra, the home colony of Paul and Kate, the family he had met at Haven Station, asked him to visit. They wanted to thank him personally and show him their world. Kyle took the Eternal Horizon to New Terra, escorted by 2 Alliance ships. The Coalition had backed off its pursuit, but old habits died hard. The escort felt appropriate. New Terra was beautiful. A green and blue world with 3 small moons and vast oceans. The main settlement was built along a coastline, simple structures that blended with the natural landscape. As Kyle's shuttle descended, he saw thousands of people gathered at the landing field. Paul met him at the base of the shuttle ramp, his wife Kate and their children beside him. The whole family wore formal clothing, traditional outfits from New Terra's culture. "Welcome to our home," Paul said, shaking Kyle's hand firmly. "We never thought we'd be able to invite someone from Earth here. Thank you for making it possible." Kate hugged him, tears in her eyes. "You gave us our future back. Our children can grow up in sunlight now instead of hiding in stations." Their daughter, a girl of maybe 8, stepped forward shyly. She held out a small wooden carving, a bird with outstretched wings. "I made this for you. It's a phoenix, like the Alliance symbol. My teacher says you helped humanity rise from the ashes." Kyle took the carving, feeling a lump in his throat. "Thank you. It's beautiful." The gathered crowd erupted in applause. Kyle stood there, surrounded by people whose lives had changed because of a decision he had made on a warship bridge 6 months ago. It was overwhelming. Paul led Kyle through the settlement, introducing him to leaders and ordinary citizens. Everyone had stories about how the revelation had affected them. Some had family on Earth they could finally contact. Others had been reunited with relatives from other hidden colonies. A few were just relieved to stop living in fear. That evening, they held a feast in Kyle's honor. Long tables were set up under the open sky, covered with food from New Terra's unique cuisine. Kyle sat with Paul's family, listening to stories and laughter. As the sun set over New Terra's ocean, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Paul raised a glass. A toast. To Linda Shaw, who had the courage to preserve the truth. To the Free Colonies Alliance, who kept hope alive. And to Kyle Harris, who found a way to share the truth without tearing us apart. Everyone raised their glasses. Kyle felt the weight of what he had done settling on him in a different way. Not as a burden, but as a responsibility fulfilled. Linda had been right to leave the choice to whoever found her ship. She had trusted that person to do the right thing. Kyle hoped he had lived up to that trust. After the feast, Kyle walked along the beach with Paul. The ocean waves rolled gently against the sand, and 2 of New Terra's moons hung low on the horizon. "What will you do now?" Paul asked. Kyle had been thinking about that question for weeks. "Keep flying, I think. There are a lot of colonies that need supplies and support during this transition. The Eternal Horizon is fast and well-armed. I can help protect shipments, escort refugees, maybe even explore some of the systems that Linda documented but never visited. You could settle down somewhere, Earth, New Terra, anywhere really. You'd be welcome." Kyle smiled. "Maybe someday, but right now, I feel like I should use this ship the way Linda intended. To connect people. To help build the bridges that humanity needs." Paul nodded. She would have liked that. They walked in comfortable silence for a while. Then Paul spoke again. "You know, historians are already calling this period the Great Revelation, the time when humanity learned its true history. They're saying it will be remembered as one of the most important moments in human civilization." Kyle picked up a smooth stone from the beach and skipped it across the water. "I just bought a ship at an auction. Everything else kind of happened around me. That's what makes it remarkable. You weren't trying to be a hero or start a revolution. You just tried to do the right thing with an impossible situation. That's the kind of heroism that matters most." Kyle thought about Linda Shaw, spending years gathering evidence she was too afraid to release. About Palmer and the Alliance, living in hiding while preparing for a future they weren't sure would come. About all the ordinary people who had made extraordinary sacrifices for the truth. "I had a lot of help," Kyle said. "Linda did the hard work. Palmer and his people kept the faith. I just pressed a button and hoped for the best." "You chose how to press that button. That made all the difference." Later that night, Kyle returned to the Eternal Horizon. The ship felt different now. Not just a vessel he had bought by accident, but a symbol of something larger. A reminder that truth matters, that courage comes in many forms, and that sometimes the most important choices are made by the most unlikely people. He sat in the captain's chair, looking at the stars through the bridge's transparent dome. Somewhere out there were hundreds of human colonies, all slowly coming together after centuries of separation. There would be challenges ahead, cultural differences to navigate, political structures to build, wounds to heal. But humanity would face those challenges together, united by truth rather than divided by lies. Kyle pulled up a star chart, plotting a course to his next destination. Another hidden colony requesting medical supplies. Another group of people who needed help during this time of transition. Another chance to use the eternal horizon for something good. As the ship powered up its engines, Kyle thought about that day in the auction house. He had raised his hand as a joke, bored and looking for something to do. He had bought a warship for the price of a used shuttle. He had uncovered a conspiracy that spanned a century. And somehow, against all odds, he had helped humanity take a step toward a better future. The eternal horizon slipped away from New Terra, heading back into the depths of space. Kyle had work to do, colonies to visit, people to help, a future to build. He was just a cargo hauler who had made an impulse buy at an auction, but he had changed the galaxy forever, and he was just getting started. Kyle shook his hand. I'm not much of a rebel. I'm just a cargo hauler who made an impulse buy at an auction. You're more than that now. You're the person who chose to trust humanity with the truth. That takes a special kind of courage. As they talked, the beacon continued its work, sending carefully timed packets of information across the galaxy. The truth was spreading, slowly but inevitably. In 6 months, humanity would know its real history. For now, Kyle just had to survive long enough to see it happen. The right thing. I'm trusting that too. Kyle turned to face them. And if I decide to destroy the beacon? If I decide the risk is too great? Palmer's expression was unreadable. Then we respect that choice. We let you go, we continue hiding, and maybe someday someone else finds a way to reveal the truth. We're not going to force you, Kyle Harris. This has to be your decision. Kyle looked at these people, rebels and refugees who had sacrificed everything to preserve the truth. He thought about Linda Shaw, spending her last years in hiding, gathering evidence she was too afraid to release. He thought about the coalition frigates that had opened fire without hesitation. How long do I have? The coalition is searching for you. They'll check obvious systems first, then expand their search. You probably have a few days before they think to look here, maybe a week if we're lucky. Palmer moved toward the door. Use that time, see what we've built. Decide if it's worth protecting. As they left the briefing room, Kyle couldn't shake one thought. A week ago, he had been a struggling cargo hauler with nothing but a small ship and mounting debts. Now he was standing in a hidden rebel base, being asked to decide whether to start a revolution that could reshape human civilization. The universe definitely had a strange sense of humor. Clement in this system. Home to about 50,000 people, all descended from one of the original lost colonies. They have a lot to tell you, Kyle Harris, and you have a lot to learn. One of the ships in the sphere broke formation and moved closer. Follow our lead. We'll escort you in. Welcome to the truth. Kyle programmed the Eternal Horizon to follow the escort ship. As they moved deeper into the system, toward the asteroid field where Haven Station was hidden, Kyle couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed forever. He had bought a ship at an auction to cure boredom. Now he was traveling with rebels to a hidden colony to decide the fate of human civilization. The universe had a strange sense of humor. Khan will activate a network I built. Hidden transmitters in dozens of systems, all ready to broadcast the truth simultaneously. Once activated, the coalition can't stop it. But it will also start a war. Maybe a civil war among humans. Maybe a war between Earth and the free colonies. I don't know. Linda smiled sadly. I couldn't make that choice. It's too big, too important. So I'm leaving it to whoever finds this ship. If you're brave enough to activate the beacon, humanity will learn the truth. If you're wise enough to destroy it, maybe billions of people stay safe in their ignorance. Either way, the choice is yours now. The recording ended. Kyle sat in silence for a long time, staring at the cube on the desk. It was definitely warmer now, hot enough to be uncomfortable. The beacon was waking up, responding to being removed from the vault. He had come to this auction looking for something to do on a boring afternoon. Now he held the fate of humanity in his hands, to lie to his body. Displays around him brightened, responding to his presence. Kyle pulled out his datapad and tried to interface with the ship's computer. The systems were encrypted and written in an alien language, but basic functions were accessible. He managed to pull up some logs, though he couldn't read most of them. One thing was clear in the timestamp data. The crew had left this ship 3 years ago. They had powered down non-essential systems, set the ship to automatic maintenance mode, and departed. There were no logs of combat, no emergency protocols activated. They had left calmly and deliberately. But why? Why would the Vexillari abandon a perfectly functional warship? Why hadn't they come back for it? Kyle sat in the command chair, looking out at the stars through the transparent dome, and felt the weight of the mystery settling on his shoulders. He had bought this ship as a joke, a moment of impulse at a boring auction. Now he needed to figure out what he had really purchased,